Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Countdown to Christmas 2021. In honor of today's topic of mitts and mittens, I decided to go ahead and put on a hat and a scarf because I'm about to show you the matching mittens. Back in the earlier part of the countdown, I showed you this hat and this cowl and said I would be showing you the mittens that went along with it. These are my daughter's that I made for her before she went into the Peace Corps. And I made her some matching mittens. And I figured the best way of showing them off is to show off all three together. So this is going to be probably one of my shorter videos because the truth is I haven't made a ton of mitts and mittens. I've made a few sets of socks and I'll be showing those later on, but I'm not very good at the whole two matching things and having them both work up well. I'm an impatient knitter and trying to get it to where they they're the same size. That can be different. But this was a great success for me. I did manage to get somewhat similar sized mittens and a hat and a cowl for my daughter, and they've been well worn. They are we intentionally wanted them to felt a little, and they are slightly felted. They felted more as she wore them, and I think that I put on the cowl and it makes it feel like I have fuzz on my nose now. Strangely, I thought these would be a little bit too itchy for me, but now that I have them on, they really don't feel much itchy at all. So that's good to know. Maybe I'm not always as sensitive as I think I am. So this is the matching set that I made for her. And I did not use a pattern. I just, I worked them up, left open an opening, and that was it. Oh, yes. So here's the thing. When I have done socks, I found some patterns, I think very pink knits. They showed a toe-up sock that had this wonderful cast on where it was a wonderful cast on. I do not know what it's called. I'll see if I can find the link and make sure to put it in the description if I can find it. But I like using that cast on for the toe. What I did with these mitts is I used the same technique to make the fingers. And then just increased a little bit, just like, you know, to have a little more width. And then when I got to the area that I thought the thumb would go, I just I didn't do a steek. Let me double check. No, all I did is I made a hole. So I went back and forth instead of going in the round. I made a I left an opening and then I closed the opening back up. And that's how I made these mittens, because I really don't like to keep track of counting. When I make socks, that's about the extent of my wanting to keep track of counting. And so I really wanted something simple, and I was able to do this. So I really need to make another pair. It doesn't get very cold here in Virginia most of the time, and so I don't have a lot of use for these. But that was how I did those mittens, using a cast on similar to a toe-up sock, knit. Just when I reached to the point where I had it long enough, I instead of going in the round, I just went back and forth until I had enough area for the thumb, returned to knitting in the round, and then I picked up stitches to make the thumb, and sewed the thumb, or knit the thumb, and then closed it. Very simple. I wish I could do that with gloves, but I did have an attempt years ago of making making fingerless mitts. My daughter and I tried to make a pattern. We actually did write it up. So I do have a pattern. One side of the palm is a little different than the other. It's a little looser. We made some adjustments. So I do somewhere have a pattern for fingerless mitts, but my desire to not be that fiddly. I do. These are actually ones that I wear all the time. So this one is much looser, and this one is a little tighter. And depending on how my hands are swollen, this is actually more comfortable. So it is interesting, you know, just the difference. But we made fingerless mitts, and there are times, especially before we moved, that I would wear these when my hands would hurt. I can work on the keyboard. They're not quite like a compression glove, so they just help keep the hands warm. So I know there are tons of patterns out there. If you haven't tried fingerless mitts or fingerless, fingerless gloves, and it's something you're interested in, I do recommend them. It is fun to give it a try. They can be quite appreciated by their recipient. Okay, so I do have proof that I have tried gloves. But these are some that I want. This is a gauntlet. And oh my goodness, arm warmers big time. I think I'm trying to decide. I have a knit that I'm doing right now. I believe I showed it in the day that I showed the earrings and the stitch markers. I showed one of the projects I was working on was a sock, and one of the projects was, it may be fingerless mittens, or it may be gauntlets. Here's the thing with gauntlets. There's just a big opening for the thumb, and it's just arm warmers. And so I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to go with. I'm just knitting, and when I get to that point, I'll decide. But these, my daughter has well used these. They two went to Mongolia with her. Actually, they were sent to her. Here's a story. So that summer with Tour de Fleece, I took a challenge knit to combine 5 different fibers and knit it, or spin it. So this was a combination of 5 different fibers that I had on hand. I can't to this day remember what it is. I might have it in a project note in Ravelry. I have no idea. I'm shedding all over myself. I know something in here sheds. And I know one of the fibers was some blended fiber that I had done with alpaca that was kind of a peachy color that I hadn't been able to figure out how to use. And so I took the fibers and I spun them up and I knitted them up. And then what I did is I sent them to my son, because I could military mail them really quickly to where he's stationed in Germany. So I put them in the mail to him, and I said, all right, I have made these. What I want you to decide is, do you want them, or do you want to pass them on to your sister? If you want to pass them on to your sister, then you put them in the mail in Germany and send them to Mongolia, and maybe, just maybe, they'll get to her by Christmas. So we were hoping that mail from Europe to Mongolia would be faster than mail from the United States to Mongolia. We were correct in our assumption. And he put them on and he said, well, I wouldn't mind something like this, but I don't really think these are for me. And he sent them on to his sister, and she did. She used them. She wore them all the time. They are rough. They have lots of neps all over them. And she keeps telling me, she says, Mom, we need to put them in a dye bath. When you have a coal fire, the ash gets into everything. And she says, I see them, and all I see is the ash that is now embedded in them. So can we over dye them? So hopefully before Christmas, these will go into a dye bath and become some other color. I was actually thinking of doing some more dyeing, probably the middle. Actually, I'm hoping maybe even next week. So I'm going to try to do up a dye bath if everything goes if everything goes as planned, I'm hoping to do up some different dye projects that I've been wanting to get around to, as long as I am getting ahead of things or getting on top of things. Now that most of the decoration is done and the house is clean, it's, do I want to cook cookies or do I want to dye fabric? So my daughter's been bugging me, and yes, she knows how to dye them herself, but she prefers if I do it, partly because she's my kid, and like everyone's kids, they seem to think if mom does it, it's so much better. Not because we do better work, because then they don't have to. So, but the other reason is she does actually prefer the way I dye. She is quite an artist in her own right, much more skilled with art than I am. But for whatever reason, she has a hard time finger painting. That girl, even when she was really little, just couldn't cut loose and finger paint. And so when it comes to working with the dyes and the fiber, she likes my results much better than the ones that she comes up with. So a dye bath may be in the works. These gauntlets, if you are somebody who needs just a little bit of extra warmth but needs their fingers free, if you know somebody like that, if you're a spinner and you're just trying to figure out what to do with your hand spun, I really recommend these. And these, like the mittens that I showed you, they are top down. I prefer a top down, a toe up sock, a top down mitten, because with hand spun, I never know how much I'm going to really have. So I take my yarn that I spun, I divide it by weight into 2 sections. I love having a scale on hand for that. Divide it into 2 sections, and then I just knit until I run out. And that is the method. So as long as my gauge is on track and I'm not like all of a sudden really loose, they'll show up. Wait, they will show up. They will turn out pretty much the same size if I do that. So quick and easy if you're a fast knitter, a fun project. It doesn't have to be before Christmas. It can be through the Christmas holidays. If you just want a grab and go project, here you go. And a tip I have, I have bought some inexpensive, I have learned how to do the knitting. I should have brought a project in and showed it, where where you use the longer cable and you bend it back on itself. Oh, someone else can explain it better. But basically, I've bought inexpensive cables so that I have 2 sets that I use for socks and gloves. So I actually have both of them going at the same time. I'll do 10 rows here, then do 10 rows here. And that's how I have found to keep my gauge a little bit closer between projects and get them both done, is I'll just work on 2 at a time, but on separate needles, because I see the people who do 2 socks on the same big long cable, and my mind just is blown. I do not have that kind of coordination. So however you choose to do it, fun projects, mitts and mittens, I have to tell you, I do look forward to the day when there's grandkids. I've mentioned that before, and no, I'm not suggesting to my kids to run out and do it. I am patient, but I am looking forward to those days because I want to make little mitts and mittens for little kids. And if my kids don't have kids anytime soon, I'm going to be looking for somebody else's children to start giving them to. So that is today's project, and it wasn't as short as I thought it was going to be. I was afraid I was only going to have 5 minutes, but I start laughing and we go on longer. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you again tomorrow.